Okay. Welcome, TR. Tell us
Hello.
who you are and where you're coming from. And I'm very
Um,
excited you're here.
Thank you. I am too. I'm kind of surprised that this happened, but I'm very honored. I'll try to do the best with it. So my name's TR. I'm from rural Nova Scotia, but I'm originally from Jersey and then outside of Toronto, and then I've been here for 7 years. I showed up into this province trying to get a new start. 3 weeks later, I ran into a nice young woman. We fell in love, and I shortly moved in with her family on about 3 acres in rural Nova Scotia. We're right on the ocean, and that gives us a very interesting microclimate. But we've been spending the past 7 years trying to engage in what we're going to call homesteading. To define some terms, I'll call homesteading consciously engaging with the earth with a focus on
Mm.
sustainability. And then, if you're going to add a little extra on that, bioremediation, which is basically utilizing planting techniques and all sorts of different ways to heal the earth, because we're able to do that in so many amazing ways that people aren't talking about. So from I'm here to kind of talk to everybody about how they can get involved in this and kind of the magic behind it.
So cool. And thank you for being here. I kind of called you last minute, but I've been thinking about it for a while because homesteading to me feels like the way of the gods. And what I mean by the way of the gods is like a way to be an autonomous being that's sort of in charge of creating your own reality, of writing your own story. And of course, I love the energy of homesteading because it's so much about getting in tune with the magic of the earth. So I want to talk to you about the magic and the ritual of homesteading, but also some more of the practicality around it. And yeah, so we're doing this now as part of a series with the Horpod Patreon of conversations with community because I feel really lucky in that so many of you guys are so fucking magic and you just happen to be courageous enough to share your heart on some of our lives before and it really resonated with people and I just know you're a whale of knowledge and a whale of knowledge around psychedelics too, which I think is really cool. How do you think psychedelics interact with homesteading?
Well, it's I mean, I was just talking to one of my friends who's been doing ayahuasca with a shaman out here in Nova Scotia all throughout the pandemic, and he's been feeling called to do the medicine, and he's got some land there, and he's just like, I speak plants, buddy. I speak plants better than I speak people, and that's like a big part of it. But also, kind of like you were saying earlier, the energy of being able to experience being your own god, of like controlling or governing kind of an area, and then having that being in tune. I mean, I'll share an experience where early in the homesteading, where I had to clear a whole bunch of kind of stuff that had overgrown through my garden, and I went to go cut it all up, but this comfrey bush, not a bush, but like a whole bunch of leaves, just didn't want to go. And they were invasive and they were taking over the whole garden. And I just felt them screaming as I cut them down. It was horrible. It was horrible. There's a lot that you've got to do to maintain your systems, from outside and inside forces that are difficult, right? Like you're gonna have to like diseased plants. You're gonna have to kill, right? Animals, it's a whole nother lesson if you're going to harvest your own animals. I have. It's a spiritual experience if you're present with it. And I've invited people onto the property just to witness it, just to be
Yeah.
present with it.
What do you
And
mean by harvesting your own animals?
oh,
I
uh,
mean, I know what you
yeah,
mean, but I think it's
sorry. No,
important to
no,
break
it's
it
good.
down.
It's good. This is why I think that it's good to have this dialogue, because I realized after you asked me about doing this, is I've been doing this so long that I forget how people who just don't know it. Yeah, that's butchering animals. We have rabbits that we raise for meat, and yeah, it's hard, and it's been a challenge for a long time. And honestly, ayahuasca played a role for me with the rabbit harvesting. I went to Peru in 2015 and to drink ayahuasca, and for a whole story that is not necessarily on topic here, I had a very unique ayahuasca experience where even though I drank what everyone else drank, sometimes more, I had no visions. And I got one vision at the JFK airport on my layover home, just walking around waiting to get on my plane. And I was really struggling with the moralities of eating meat and all of that. And I just felt ayahuasca come to me and kind of showed me a field. And then it showed me a whole bunch of starving people who couldn't eat the grass. And then she showed me, if you put the rabbits in between, you can then feed people from the sun, to the grass, to the rabbits, to the people. And she didn't even say what was right or wrong. She just asked me, what's the moral answer? And I don't think there is one. It was just to open up me up that, there are ways to responsibly do this that are really that can be eco-friendly, that can be really sustainable and beneficial. I mean, my rabbits, they eat fresh grass multiple times a day. We have them in moving tractors, basically big cages on wheels, so they can have tons of space to move around, and they get fresh grass every day. Uh, Sorry, this is such a hard
Yeah.
topic. That
No,
it's
you're doing great.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're doing
Um,
great. And it's a tricky. I have gone years with being vegan, and then I've gone years with not being vegan. When I got Lyme, I went all vegan to try to clear the Lyme from my body because there are parasites that come from meat. And I did my own sort of like psychedelic journeys around eating meat or being vegan because I also have like a fucked up endocrine system. And I was so malnourished as a child that it's really hard for me to get the proper nutrition now. And so I went vegan and I told Rosie, who's a midwife, who's a homesteader, who raises goats and bunnies and kills them. Even saying that, it's like, and she does, but she doesn't have shame about it. She thinks it's, the cycle of life. And I came to her and she's like, bitch, you cannot be vegan right now. Like you cannot survive with not getting like amino acids and animal proteins. And I was like, no, because I don't like the idea of eating meat. I don't like the idea of eating like dead things. It feels like weird energetically to me, but like she just provided a lot of like bodily education and how, this isn't for all people. I also think like blood types and ethnicity
100%.
has something to do with what we're supposed to eat and how we're supposed to eat. And something I believe is that like melanated people are a class of gods that are closer to the sun, that melanin's a superpower, and that they derive nutrition from the sun in a different way than I can. And that there's certain magical melanated people who have educated me around on like feeding themselves from the sun because I'm going to fuck this up, but the melanated part of the melanin they have within themselves can convert the sun into energy for their body, where I have a really hard time doing that. Does that make sense? And once I started eating, like I only eat very certain meat now, but I don't have I'm not sick now. So that's just a weird confessional around food. And I've been thinking so much about food lately. I'm going to do a whole HorrorPod episode just on the energy of food and how food can connect us to past timelines and ancestral magic.
Mhm.
What's been your relationship with food growing up, and how did it shift with homesteading?
I grew up in a suburb outside of New York City, and then a suburb outside of Toronto. I ate your pretty standard, like, English descendant meat and potatoes kind of a thing. You're eating a lot of stuff from boxes. You're eating a lot of processed food. My parents tried to give a lot of whole foods, but still, this was before like organic. So you're still getting like, you're still getting beef that was tortured its whole life. You're still getting stuff that was sprayed pesticides on it. And I'll say that the moment that food changed for me was 2013, 2012, something like that. I ate a bunch of mushrooms, and the mushrooms just said to me, "Hey, bud, eat less meat and like meat and meat, fish, and cheese and bread, and eat more fruits and vegetables." In the next 2 weeks, I just ate more fruits and vegetables, and was pretty glued to the toilet. But then after that, I was completely different, and now my relationship with food is slowly uh, deconditioning myself from the commoditization and the commercialization. I mean, I used to work for like a food processing place, and I would sort meat, and we would throw out perfectly good pieces of chicken just because they had a burst blood vessel on them, and they weren't like visually appealing. So we'd throw it out. And
Yeah.
this is how we're treating animals. And this is why, like, if I'm going to eat animals, I'm going to do the dirty work myself or with my team here, with my family. And I'm gonna show it to people, because then you're not gonna waste food anymore. You've seen it. It's more valued.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'll tell
Yeah.
you right now, as I was putting away the animals, it's January now, and the chickens, for whatever reason, start to lay in the middle of the winter, just randomly, and then they stop. And there's eggs sitting there, right? And there's just a part of me that's like, because I didn't get it from a grocery store, it's not safe. But I'm like, I know much more about where this egg came from than the grocery store. It's just we're
Oh,
so completely
oh,
conditioned by it. And this is where I think the psychedelics come in, is because psychedelics help decondition you. Or if used in the right context, they can decondition you. I mean, God, they deconditioned me from thinking I was cisgendered. You know, like they provide neuroplasticity for us to think differently. And I think
yeah.
psychedelics help us think differently and believe in possibilities. I think why we're seeing so many like bloody zombie movies and TV shows about virus and all this kind of stuff is because we're so scared, and we don't think there's a way we can move forward. And all the work I'm seeing with homesteading, I see a place forward. I see hope. I see radical change that can happen. I'll bring up a pretty extreme example, is the lowest plateau in China. Now, it's been historically proven to have been had agriculture there for over 10,000 years. So, if we're talking about a land that has been over harvested, this is the perfect example. And it's a plateau about the size of Belgium that's basically a desert. And like the people there were so subsistent farming, like they were going through acres just to get a little bit for their herd to chew. And then the UN and China, a whole bunch of other people did concerted efforts to change how they interacted with the land using some practices we'll talk about later. Within 3 years, they saw immediate changes. Within 10 years, one guy who was earning barely enough to make a living, herding goats on barely any grass, he had an entire orchard that he was selling to cities, the fruits from it. And if you
Wow.
know anything about trees, the deep roots, they the lowest plateau started with 95% of water just washing straight off of it, right? Which creates desert conditions. So this slowed down the water, and within 10 years, they had orchards. So
Wow.
I want these stories out there because I want us to believe in hope, right?
Totally. Totally. That's beautiful. You just said so much that's speaking to me. One thing is, like, what I struggle with is, I'm an urban witch. I grew up in a city. I grew up in a meth town and trailer parks. So, and I'm afraid of food. like I'm afraid of it hurting me. I'm afraid of being poisoned by it, which I know sounds weird. And I studied with a martial artist at one point who was talking about the digestive system and said like how we breathe when we eat affects our digestion and what our muscles are doing when we eat. That's like why mindful eating is so important. And mindful eating is eating with no distraction or no stimulus and eating slower and feeling each bite you're taking and tapping into the taste buds on your tongue. And he explained to me that like my sexual trauma and my physical trauma made me afraid to take things in my body, and that literally my body tightens up when I eat and I didn't notice it. I breathe less when I eat. When I was in elementary school, I wouldn't eat at school because I was afraid of people seeing me eat, and I had no idea why. And then as I got older and was like researching childhood sexual abuse, it said one of like a predominant sign of a child being abused, sexually abused, is them afraid to eat in front of others. So I just like stopped eating. And then I would come home. I'm sorry, I'm like having all these like self reflections on food lately in a new way for myself. And I would come home and eat like a whole box of like wheat thins, and that would be my nutrition of the day and night. And I wouldn't have dinner. And, you know, how we eat as a child affects chronic illness as an adult. So even though I like talk about being an herbalist every day, it's getting over fear to connect with those herbs. Every day, it's getting over some of like my own self-doubt because I'm not like a great gardener. I don't have like a crazy green thumb. Like I don't have these prerequisites. So when you say this energy of like seeing the egg come out of the chicken, but telling yourself, oh, it might be safer at a store. I feel like that's part of our programming is to be scared of what our own hands are cultivating or that the animals are cultivating on our land. And if you're just joining us, I'm here with TR and we're talking about homesteading. Homesteading being the energy of self sovereignty, connection with the land, growing your own food, working with animals, making your own medicine. But like, you know, we step on weeds, which are medicine all the time, to go to a grocery store and spend a ton of money. And this isn't about guilt or shame if you do that, because I definitely still do that. But there is a little like grief in there. And there's this energy that when we start working with herbs a little, or even like making our own food or growing our own food, it's alchemy. It's a cult ritual, and I think it's a way to enhance our intuitive powers and our superpowers.
It's an act of independence, and acting independent in the matrix is an act of rebellion. You know, like
Yeah,
I was talking about it with my partner yesterday, and she was talking about this, and like I just started laughing. She's like, "What?" And I'm like, "Sarah, there's a voice in my head that's like, shh, not so loud. Like, don't tell people." You know, it's like there's definitely the witch wound involved in this. There's definitely all sorts of messed up programming. I mean, here's one for North Americans: is for the longest time the individual home or you know where people lived would have a garden even in relatively urban settings, and it account for about 20% of a family's food. And then after World War II, in all the splendor of all of that and all of the we got to get away from the hard times, it was like a whole thing about having a lawn, showing we have such abundance from stores, we don't have to grow our own food. So that's even with a couple of generations that a whole layer has been taken for us in regards to that. Like we need to normalize people having backyard gardens again. Like that's historically what saved families, what saved people, right?
yeah, yeah. And I think sometimes people get like a little confused with homesteading. It gets categorized as like prepper energy or like scared fear energy. But I feel like it's the opposite. And I think there's ways to tap into homesteading without doing a like full deep dive. But I guess we'll talk about that in a second. How do you feel about this question?
Have I read Farm City? No, no, I haven't read Farm City. I have a whole stack of books next to me, just in case anyone needs like a reference. I mean, I've got the Urban Homesteader, Urban Farming, all of that, but describes her journey raising animals on a tiny farm. Um, yeah, food is very intimate. I mean, if anyone watched my face while Lacey was talking, like it was so devastating some of the things you were saying because it's like I have to eat alone. Like I scutter away to my room. I have to distract myself watching something because the whole act is so difficult. I spent years digging to realize that I don't believe I'm worthy of taking things in. Right? Like
Mm,
I did a few sessions with Amy Spicer this year, and she talked to me that like eating is about like giving offerings to the God that is you, right?
yeah.
And it's like I just like when you get a reading or something and you can ride the buzz off of that for like a couple of weeks and then it's on you and you're just like I'm offering the God. Oh Christ. Like it's hard. It's
Yeah.
it's it's hard. But I'll look into it.
Mm.
Farm City. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks to Blitzwolf. It is very intimate, and intimacy breaks the matrix. It's just what keeps, that's the message I just keep getting over and over again, is intimacy breaks the matrix. And that we get so blinded by the single intimacy of just being with a partner or falling in love. And not that anything's wrong with that, but there's way more ways to be intimate with the world around us. And I swear, every time we choose to like show up vulnerable and intimate, we are enhancing our own powers. I think, anyways.
No,
And I'm really glad. Sorry, what were you going to say?
I just agreeing with you.
Yeah, and thank you guys so much for being here. Ian's here. Hi, Kelly. Rosemary is a homesteader too, right, Rosemary? We are programmed to be disconnected from our food. It keeps us reliant on the system. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of what I'd love to reinforce is like, let's kind of define homesteading now, at least in the context of this conversation for everybody. It's like these are like
Yeah.
ways of bringing into acts of independence and like bringing the power to you by sustaining your own needs and providing your own needs. And part of that is healthy interdependence because like to create your own sustainable system, it's like near impossible. It's really, really hard, and nobody can be all things. And if you look at in nature, it's like everybody's doing their own specific part, and everyone's finding their way to create abundance in a system. And I'll
Yeah.
encourage people to like think of in an urban environments, think of like what an urban environment is in like nature. And that would be like a coral reef or like the Amazon, and think of like what is in the coral reef in Amazon. Like, sure, there's animals eating animals and plants and like everywhere else, but then you get like those fish that like eat the parasites on other fish's teeth. Do you know what I mean? Like nobody's
Yeah,
getting
I know
hurt.
what
Like,
you mean.
so yeah, sorry about that. But there's all
No, it's
sorts. What I'm
fine.
the point is there's all sorts of ways that you can fill a niche, right? Like providing services in an urban setting, like that's homesteading. Like if you have
Yeah.
a crafting ability that is useful to other people, like that's totally useful. I mean, God, if you provide childcare for people who are doing the harvesting, I mean, it's all part of it. And I think this is where intimacy breaks the matrix comes in. It's like homesteading is deeply intimate. I mean, unless you're doing like the loner, go out there on your own, like it's been done, you can do it and do your thing. But like, it's all about developing a community and figuring out how to interact with other people in healthy, positive ways. And I mean, most of the stories that I've heard from like homesteads and sustainable communities that fall apart, it's people that just don't know how to sustain that intimacy. right? And don't have the maturity to be all in their power together, because we're all each other's mirrors. We're all reflecting off of each other. And I mean that's kind of the beauty of my relationship with my partner, is we're just constantly gently triggering each other. You know what I mean? It's
Mhm.
like she'll like apologize for a look. She's like, "Sorry, I thought you were gonna yell at me," and I'm like, "I thought you were gonna hit me," And it's like, so we're just kind
Yeah.
of holding space for that and just walking each other through it, I guess.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And I love what you're saying about just that people can bring their own superpowers to homesteading. That I think people get overwhelmed. Like I even get overwhelmed. I'm like, I didn't can food this year. I don't want to slaughter a bunny, you know? But and there's so many ways of, even if you're in a city apartment, of tapping into the energy of homesteading. Just like, let's name a few. Urban beekeeping is one. Do you know much about urban beekeeping?
Oh, not much. We'd love to do beekeeping, but it's so bloody humid here. We can't keep bees, but that's why we're gonna make friends with people who do urban beekeeping. But yeah, it's
Right. It's
great.
about, yeah, having those webs of community. And I think like community living is going to change, where it's not just one community, but webs of multiple communities. So urban beekeeping, like sewing, like sewing is such a skill for homesteading, knitting, sewing and knitting, like baking, canning, food preservation. I love that you brought in like childcare. I remember when I was doing a lot of activism, some people were like freaked out because they were like, I don't want to fight in the street. I don't want to do it these traditional ways. And I'll never forget Lady Speech speaking to the crowd. And she's like, you have to stay in your lane. You have to cultivate your own magic within activism. And I think homesteading is activism. I think it's how do I say it? A potent activism, sustainable activism, I guess is a better way to say it. But I remember Lady Speech, yeah, you can correct me. What would you call it?
I wasn't gonna correct you. I was just gonna add on and totally agree with you. You know, my best friend and I, he and I started the Psychedelic Society, so we've been through all sorts of activism, and over the years, I've learned that it's so helpful for him for me to be grounded out here. I don't have social media. I don't go looking at the news. I don't take any of that in. Um, but when he calls me, I can help ground a lot of the things he's talking about. And it's helped. I've done my deep dives on like economics and politics in like my early 20s. So like I know how to speak. And they'll be like, "Oh, this is so corrupt and this and this and this." And I'm like, "Yeah, I know, of course." But like when you Jesus, when you come home and you see a weasel dragging one of your favorite ducks away live, I go, "Yeah, man, like, life is full of death, it's awful," and it's like, I can't even be mad at this bloody weasel, and I could tell some fucking weasel stories, but, like,
Yeah,
I could only do what I'm doing because I know he's out there holding the Arsenal energy, right? Like, if
yeah,
it wasn't for me supporting the group of my friends who were showing up when they're fucking uh, burning Mi'kmaq lobster boats, and all the awful things that's going on here with the indigenous people. Like that's how I can do what I'm doing. But even my friend Justin, he's starting to get burnt out with all the stuff he's doing, like the on the front lines activism, because you just have to see so much hard stuff, and like no one likes to be standing face to face with cops with guns. And he's like a chef, and he recently realized that he lives right downtown. He has a cupboard filled with like 100 pounds of food, and anytime there is protests out in the street, he'll make a big pot of soup and just give out food to the people protesting and let them use his bathroom. And like that's the lane he's in,
community.
right?
Yeah, that's beautiful. That's so beautiful. Rosemary says, it's been hard for me to make connections in community and homesteading, and it's all I want. A lot of people do it out of fear, and it's hard to connect in that level. Really good point, Rosemary. I've seen that too. And fear is like chaotic energy, and it almost feels like, and you can definitely correct me because I'm not a homesteader. I mean, the last 2 years I've gotten the privilege of experiencing off the grid living in New Mexico with the earth ships and the dirt bag homes, and then like staying with Rosie. But that's different than me doing the homesteading day in and day out like TR does. And to me, it feels like you have to be so constantly in tune with your own body and like regularly tapping into your own alignment to be able to hold space for the death, for the rebirth that's constantly happening on your land. And to do it out of fear feels like chaotic energy, where I don't know if chaotic energy is sustainable energy.
No, but that's why it's super helpful to like hold space with each other people. Like for example, it's like I said with my friend the activist, like you may not feel like you're doing homesteading, but this community has been such a grounding force for me to be able to do what I'm doing, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um
Do you have any suggestions for Rosemary and what she's saying here?
yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's really hard. And especially when COVID hit, there was a lot more of that. And, some of that kind of was a little necessary just to be like, okay, we're being serious about this. Like
Yeah.
we bought a hand crank for our well, so we're not going to run out of fresh water, right? Like if the power
Yeah.
goes out, we'll just crank it, you know, and just other stuff like that. So to get to Rosemary's question is, it takes time. It takes time, and there's different ways. Like there's different ways of putting yourself out there. I mean, one of the most valuable friends in my community we made was just because she was an herbalist who had an herb walk, and we went and joined the herb walk.
Mm,
Right? Oh, and if you live in
yeah.
an urban setting, try to find an herbalist who will do an herb walk. If not, kind of
Yeah.
poke them to do an herb walk, because there's just so many magical plants just outside, even in an urban setting, that is so helpful. Like plantain's so great. I mean, I got or ran into a wasp nest and I got stung all over. I just took a bunch of plantain, chewed it up, and put it all over my stings, and then put apple cider vinegar on it. My partner didn't do that, and her hand flew up twice the size, and I didn't
Mm.
have that problem. One
Plantain
of
has been coming up for me so much. It's like crazy you mention it. It's not an herb I worked with very much before, and it's like coming up so much. And I just did a recipe for the breast oil on the Patreon, and I keep like being mad. I don't know why I just did that, but like being mad at myself for not putting plantain in it, because plantain I feel like drains the lymphatic system. What do you feel? Tell us more about plantain on an energy level or
Well,
physical.
something I'd love to throw to you, just because this is something I've noticed on how plantain grows. Plantain grows on the side of pathways, typically, or on the side
Mm,
of deer trails, because that's how they spread. Is something will kick them, and then their seeds will go and spread, and that's how they keep going like that. So it's a
that's
plant
cool.
that requires being stepped on to reproduce, but it will never be in the center of a path because it can't take too much being stepped on. And then it'll also pull up poison, and it's also very nutritious. So I don't know what to
Wow,
do with
that is
it,
so
but
that's so
yeah.
poetic. I love how you said that, and it resonates on a personal level. That's really cool. Back to like urban homesteading. Another way is growing sprouts in your kitchen, like cultivating sprouts. Do you do that?
I have it
Yeah,
right here.
sure.
So
Show
this
us.
here is the
Will you tell us
this
about
here's the
it?
little sprout tower here. So up on top you can see peas, which I just kind of soaked today. And let me see here. Oh Jesus,
So
I don't want to spill these everywhere. These are a few days older. These are lentils, right?
yes.
And then below that is the mung beans, right? And I'll put these in a blender. You can put them in stir fries. We kind of lean on these because in the winter, like this is how we'll get our greens, right? Like
Yeah.
this is how you're getting your micronutrients. And also just recommend to everybody, like it's really expensive to buy this stuff from a seed store if you want to do sprouting or microgreens or whatever. Just go to the bloody like Costco or Bulk Barn, right? Get like the whole peas because you can just sprout them. Like it's a whole like mind blow to realize that they're all seeds what you're eating. So you can just soak them
Yeah.
and sprout them. You can get these little trays from like, you know, whatever stores. I just wanted to quickly just circle back to something you said about chaos. And I'm just going to say,
Yeah.
like, remember that homesteading and interacting with nature is a mirror. And so there's going
Mm.
to be chaos. You,
Yeah.
I went through like 2 heart-wrenching years over my relationship with eating animals. Right? Like to the point where I, like you, I got so sick and I ran it. I did work with the second indigenous medicine woman who was like, "Sweetie, you need to eat meat." Right? You know, it's so healing for the heart, especially for long-term depression, because it drains you so much of qi. And traditional Chinese medicine acupuncturist told it to me. It's like in traditional Chinese medicine, like you use meat for people who are sick or elderly who need that extra qi. And so, like,
Yeah.
I imagine that I'm gonna need, like, a long time of, like, eating bone broth. You know, it's half of why we do the animals is for the bone broth. And, like, they eat grass and food scraps their whole life. Like, I can boil those bones to the bone, or not to the bone, till they disintegrate because there's no chemicals,
Yeah.
there's no heavy metals trapped in there. Um, one
Yeah.
more thing to the urban farming is when you go and meet somebody or when you go to somebody's homestead or whatever, like when you're producing your own food, you're always going to have like your tomato harvest comes in and you've got way more tomatoes than you know what to do with, or fresh basil, or you made a craft. Like start the gifting economy. When you show up to someone's home, like bring them a little gift because you know what that means is they're going to bring probably you a little gift, right? And like my partner has a friends on the other side of the bay, and they've never spoken about it, but every time they show up, they have a plan, and
So sweet.
they've got a wonderful relationship, and it reminds me of one of my teachers. She's was my therapist for a long time, but she's also a Cree medicine woman. She told me about how when you visit the elders in a community, they don't ask to be paid or anything, but you don't show up without an offering, even if it's tobacco or sweetgrass, because then they don't have to go to the effort of getting that or preparing it. So
Yeah.
yeah, gifting economy is great. Putting yourself out there, understanding this takes time. Like your community is like an orchard. You know, we're not planting annuals that'll just be quickly harvested in a few months. Like you're putting down roots, and that'll take time. When COVID started, I tried to start a group out here of homesteaders, and it really only became me and a friend of mine that would show up to them. So I stopped holding the
Mm.
meetings because the community wasn't responding, and I just hung out with my friends, and we've been working on their 100 acres and our 3 acres and just growing the community. And I know more will come, right?
I
And
love
then let's just sorry, one last thing. Just when people are there's mass starvations or when there's hunger or when we need to do this for real or work together, we'll have practiced that, right? We'll have practiced how to be in community. We won't be experts, but we won't be panicking because it's something we're a level of comfortable with. My partner does survivalist training and tracker training, and like how to like hide in the woods and stuff. And one of the things that she teaches the
so
search and
cool.
rescue. I know she's such a fucking badass. Um,
Mm.
I'm just grateful to spend all this time with her. But one of the things she teaches you is the number one thing you need to do to practice survival is practice those scenarios just for the basic comfort of it. Like, if you want to practice surviving the woods, go do a lot of hiking. Spend a lot of times in the woods and go, oh, I'm fine. So if you're ever in the woods without knowing how to get home, you're not panicking. You're not throwing
Yeah.
your intuition. You're like, I know how to
Yeah.
do this. Every time there's a
Yeah.
power outage, I go, I'm practicing for if the grid goes down, right? Like,
Yeah.
I know, bring out the candles, start the fireplace, huddle up.
Yeah.
Sorry.
That's really good. No, don't be sorry. You're doing an amazing job. You want to read Kelly's question or
Sure. We've got a 600-foot
more
garden,
of a
and
comment?
our goal is to move into homesteading for sure. It's hobby, not from a place of fear. And then Rosemary, I'd love to connect with you, so I hope you
I,
next. But yeah,
I
you can do a lot with a small garden. You can feed yourself a lot, especially if you do polycultures, which is planting things together, right? There's a wonderful book called Carrots Love Tomatoes, where planting carrots and tomatoes work really well. And so you can put a whole lot on one place together. It's more disease resistant. And if you look online, there's tons of business models to turn like a small area into a thousands of dollar producing garden, because if you produce cuttings of, like, say, fruit bushes or currants, and every year you just make cuttings and graft them or whatever, like, sell them for $25 each, like, you can make $10,000 per, like, whatever it is. You can do a lot with a little, is what I'm trying to say. And here's a few books. This is The Urban Farmer, right, by Curtis Stone. I recommend that for people. And this is about growing food for profit on leased and borrowed land. So there's a lot of people with lands, and they're not using all of it. And I know a lot of people in the city who will go to the outskirts of the city, find people who have got extra land. We've got extra land we're not using, and we only have 3 acres if we had the help. So there are people who are willing to enter in arrangements with you. So that's there.
I
The
just want to interject
farm.
real quick. Like, you
Go ahead.
don't have to have a lot of land, right? You don't have to have a
No.
lot of land to start homesteading. You can do it in an urban apartment by having plants, growing sprouts. Oh, quickly, I just want to ask, I was doing like a session with someone, and I was like, she was feeling a lot of panic around the fear of the world and some like spiritual warfare stuff. And we talked about, like, I was like, you could just start small and grow sprouts in your kitchen. And she was like, no, I can't. Because, you know, she locked up, her body locked up. Is there any way, like, or any resource you can give us on just like simply how someone could grow sprouts in there, like how you have it? Is there any way either you could write down directions that we could post with this video, or like a resource for it? Because, like, I
Sure.
know
I
to
mean,
you it's super simple, but I think to a lot of people, even just growing sprouts on your countertop might be really scary.
okay. All right, those playing at home. This is a gigantic thing of peas, right? So you take that and let's.
Oh my God, I love this.
You take a jar. You pour some peas into the jar. Okay. The only way you're gonna mess this up is if you miss the jar. Okay. So remember, they're going to expand quite a bit. So do a little less than you think. Pour water into that, and you do that for 12 to 24 hours. They'll expand. Then you dump that on here. It's going to end up looking like something like this. You can make these homemade, but you can buy these
Yeah.
uh, all over the place. Like, if you just look for
What is it called?
sprouting kit, just look for sprouting kit, something like this. I mean, I can write this down if people want to, but there's tons of blog posts all over the place. And then the key is, team, is you just want to, like, rinse them once or twice a day and check them for mold, right? And then just harvest them once their little tails are out. I mean, These have little holes on the bottom so that water goes through. But like, guys, that's what sprouting is, right? Like if you just have a bag of lentils and like you could just Google, excuse me, things to sprout with, you can sprout all sorts of amazing things. So if you just have a bag in your closet and there's some sort of power outage or there's a food supply chain interruption, you can just germinate your own little multivitamins right here. You mix
Yeah,
this bag of rice, you'll get through it,
yeah. Yeah,
right?
that's so cool. I love that you just gave us a demonstration. And definitely, if you want to provide us with any links or instructions for anything, even beyond sprouting. Do you want to read what Michelle's saying? Sweet Michelle.
Um, sure. First to TKBT Blitz. I'm not on the island. I'm not on PEI. I'm out on Nova Scotia, which, except for the tiniest land bridge, is an island out in the Atlantic. We're a peninsula. Here's a terrifying fact: over 80% of our food comes through one highway on that tiny land bridge. So if that's knocked out, we run out of 80% of our food.
Wow.
So yeah, I'm in Nova Scotia. So Michelle, TR, I just want to thank you for sharing about harmonic arts with me previously. You've made such a difference in my life. Thank you. Oh, thank you, Michelle. Well, thank you. That's very wonderful. Harmonic arts is wonderful. I love it. I'm drinking Harmonic Arts Activate blend. It right now it's chocolate and mushrooms, and I do back when festivals were a thing. I would go work in the trip sitting tent at festivals. So if people
It's
had
so
a
cool.
hard time, oh, I've got stories. People would go there, and when you didn't want to be like, you wanted to go experience the dancing and the partying and all that and the music, but you had a shift later on, so you couldn't drop M or whatever. Like I know people who would just take a whole bunch of this, and because there's so much nutrients and body is supported, I've done it. Like you feel high just on your body being so supported. So yeah, harmonic arts has changed my life too.
That's awesome.
Is this the person that drew that amazing picture of me?
Yeah, it's
I was
Ha.
aha, that was so incredibly touching, and like to be seen, I feel like the little demon vampires inside of me were like, light, no. So it was beautiful and triggering, but I mean I showed my partner and she was like, that's you. It's so you. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, Ha's been he's just been capturing certain people's souls who have been on the live. He's done like a handful or so, and every time I see one, I just like tear up. It's so corny of me, but I just thought it was so beautiful, and I love how he captured you. And you were so raw in that superpower live we did.
Yeah.
Um,
That was hard.
okay.
That was hard. That I was going through what I've learned to call an energetic tower moment, where I was just, while talking, I was feeling the blockages in my energy system fall apart, which is beautiful. It's making space, but also it, it's like tearing down like support beams in a house. It's like I was collapsing in on myself while it. So I'm just so touched that people got something from it, because I felt like I was having a minor nervous breakdown.
Oh, yeah. I wish we could have supported you better afterwards because you gave everyone a lot of light, while you were doing it. But I think, as a person in this community, in a community I'm trying to cultivate, I have to remember that, like, it's a lot to just get up here and, like, say what you're feeling, And you're not the first person who, like, felt a lot of energy after sharing in the community. I think it's been pretty positive overall, but it is sort of like a tower moment. And I can't exactly
Mhm.
put my finger on why. Maybe it's just like the vulnerability. What do you feel like it is?
I think this is what we're here for. We're here to gently trigger each other and then go, "Oh no, it's okay. It's safe. That was difficult, but you're still here." Like that's
Yeah.
how I felt when I saw the picture and you asking me. I felt so embraced after being so vulnerable. I think it's all part of it. One of the things they teach us, one of the four principles of trip sitting is difficult is not bad, right?
Yeah.
Um, so yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. What was difficult about it for you? Not to like beat a dead horse, but I just know you're not the only one feeling it right now. So I think it might like
Um,
help.
well, it's interesting how to describe it because I think, a few years ago I was describing the language of the mind, like how I thought and perceptions. But as I'm slowly stepping more into speaking from the spirit or energy, it's just like I was said, like I was here holding space for a renovation. My body decided to go for an open concept feel in the living room or, and it's just tearing down. So I was more just holding space for all the changes that were going on with me. So,
Yeah.
yeah, or it's like I said earlier, it's like when you shine light on it, the vampires don't like it.
Mm,
They hide from the light. So,
yeah,
light and garlic, you need that.
totally. Totally. So, do you want to read Ha's comment?
Sure. The experience of being in a gifting community, even briefly, always feels spiritually refreshing than making money the capitalist way. I'm
Totally.
right there with you. I so agree in so many different ways. And I think just in how I interact with other people, like we'll barter so much more than other things and like trade this for that or the gifting like we were talking about. And I'm even super excited about like we call marijuana a weed for a reason because it grows like a weed. We should not be paying for cannabis. Cannabis should be falling from the sky. It's so around us, and we should all be cultivating it right next to the other necessary plants. And so, I believe fully that we should have a post-capitalist cannabis gifting economy. Same with our food. Same with all this other stuff. Um, but it's hard having that in one hand and then the other hand existing where I need those silly green pieces of paper or they'll shut off my power. So, yeah.
Yeah. So going back to this energy of like sovereignty or like a spiritual warfare, one thing I learned recently is that there's a lot of states where it's completely in the United States where it's completely illegal to homestead.
Yeah.
Like
I think
Colorado,
there's a sorry, I think there's a legal thing there, like homesteading from like the settling of the old West of like calling this my sovereign place. But I'm interested in how the definition is with what you're talking
yeah, and I don't really know, so I maybe shouldn't bring it up, but I just it feels like there's like a war on it a little bit. And nothing to like
about. Hmm.
panic about or fear. But I know in Colorado, I think this might have changed recently, but in Colorado, it's illegal to catch rainwater and like filter your own rainwater.
Yeah, the
Like,
water rights. Jesus.
yeah.
Mhm.
Leslie
It's
says,
so,
yeah.
sorry.
Leslie says, I love this too because I don't have a clue how to do any of this, but it interests me. Yeah. I think a lot of us don't have a clue, and that's been strategic. But I think some of it is more intuitive than we know. Like when I started making herbal medicines, I was like, this is stupid how easy this is. I have a mason jar and I put fresh or dried herb, depending, and then I fill the mason jar up with vodka, and then I put cheesecloth over it and close the lid and let it sit for 6 weeks. And now I have real medicine that greatly affects my body. So even just, doing little herbal medicine making is homesteading. A lot of people who homestead do homeschooling as well. And I see it as like just a complete deprogramming. I'm glad
Mhm.
you're here,
And, like,
Leslie.
It's returning to, like, how people used to learn. I mean, my partner's, family, immigrated from Germany, and they're, like her parents are, like, old school rural, you know, grew up with sheep and making their own hay and all of this, and, uh, just went right out of my head. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. Leslie said you did an amazing job. I freak out after every time I share, but I'm so thankful for this community and allowing us a safe place to embrace ourselves and share. That being said, it's also cool and fine if people feel, like a little what do you call it? Like a vulnerability hangover, and you have to like step back, or you don't want to be seen, or you don't want to be a part of the community anymore. That's like all of those are totally beautiful options as well. And it's just about people having their own discernment. But like I get it too. Like I get so much pain and it's getting better, but like I used to like cry after every time I recorded a podcast episode. Like literally I would cry. The first time I was on Jess's, I was like, please don't release it. Don't release it. And I'm so glad she did.
Yeah,
Jonathan says, hi, Jonathan. I'm glad you're here. And Jonathan says, glad you're here, TR.
thank you.
Do you want to read Ian's?
Sure. This live is so magic. I love hearing your philosophy of being triggered, TR. Definitely agree. We're all just kind of helping each other pressure test our reality so we can be our best selves. Yeah, for
Oh,
sure. That's definitely how I can see it. And I guess one of the gifts of being so messed up that you're just triggered by everything is that you kind of let go. It takes away power of the things that trigger you because it's just like it's everything. So you just start to dance with it, right?
yeah. 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 I'm starting to like have more gratitude of when I do get triggered. It's easy to say when I'm on the other side, not so much when I'm in the moment of being triggered, but I feel the growth now after every trigger.
hmm and just about like the spiritual warfare, it's like yes, but let's also acknowledge that this is like 2,000, at least 1,000 years in the making. You know, like this is the same old crap that we've been facing. And I think that a lot of what they're doing is just like the last grasps of straws to move forward. And then also like one of the at the solidarity events for the Mi'kmaq out here, which is the lands that I am on. I'm on unceded Mi'kmaq territory, and in the solidarity events, they will talk. They'll be like, white people, like they came for our land first, they're coming for your land next, and then they'll say like, what do you think's going to happen if a hurricane hits Halifax, where half of the province's population live, and then all these people now have to find new places to live, right? Like when we need the food, like nobody's going to be caring about who's doing the rainwater. I think the corporations will try to make a last grasp, but it's like it's these ridiculous actions that are making people like my parents go, "Oh, this system's broken." Seeing it,
Yeah.
former CNN watchers who now won't even look at the thing just because they're like, "Oh, this is a farce." It's something Justice said a long time ago that I've just been clinging on to with dear life just because like I need a story to help get me through this. And I find it being true. It's like watching a play that's been terribly rehearsed and they're all throwing it forward and you're just watching the scenery fall apart and nobody knows their lines. And we're all here like, wow, this is a mess. Like we need to do something different. So
Yeah, but it's a really good point you're bringing up. And I do see it as encouragement when the government tries to control more in a way or like freaks out, because it's just showing us that they're losing control, they're losing power over the people. And I'm being a little repetitive here, but every time we do an act of making our own food, our own medicine, or sewing a piece of cloth, or even going to a thrift store, or, acknowledging the weeds outside, every time we do that, we're implanting new codes on our energy field. We're increasing our own superpowers. The Blitzwolf said, Lacey, Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, and like, let's acknowledge that while we work, because that's one of the reasons why this is so damn hard, is because we're working with the energetics behind it. Like,
Yeah.
that just hold a lot of compassion for yourself, because like I've been doing this for like 7 years, and like I just said, I just dealt with struggling to grab an egg from my hen house. And it's like,
Yeah.
just hold space, love yourself for it, and like throw out any expectations about how you are supposed to engage with the earth. Because if you go in with an open heart, that relationship and your place in it will just start to open up, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like,
And the
just
earth,
as, sorry, go on.
no, you go ahead. Sorry.
I was just gonna say, and just as we cultivate the plants and gives them their best environment for them to thrive, she will cultivate us in our environment for us to thrive, right? So.
Yeah. Yeah. And the earth, it will, as corny as it sounds, it literally will speak to you. Sometimes people say, like, I'm not getting downloads, or I don't see my guides, or I feel like my intuition is clogged. And it's like, go outside, just sit outside. Even if you're in a city and you have to go to a crowded park, go there and sit. And like the leaves will talk to you, the mushrooms will talk to you. You know, like TR, this might sound kindergarten a little bit to you because you're so deep into the mushrooms and the psychedelic society. But one thing I've been thinking a lot about mushrooms is working with mushrooms in death energy, and
Yes.
working with mushrooms as like death allies. And of course, psychedelic mushrooms or psilocybin for sure. But even like all mushrooms come from the dead. So when we talk about like not eating meat, or not, I shouldn't say all mushrooms come from the dead, but it feels like that to me energetically. And when we talk about not eating meat, well, mushrooms in a sense are kind of like similar to meat in a way that they harvest sort of the dead bodies and get nutrition from the
Hmm.
decaying animal bodies, the decaying human bodies, and it takes what is dead and like cultivates magic in it. And I almost feel like you get like psychic magic from the mushroom from what died before. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I'm loving it. Mushroom magic is like my favorite magic. I love tapping into plants and animals as like teachers, and the mushroom teacher and the mushroom spirit. It so resonates with me. Yeah, a lot of things you said resonate. Terrence McKenna used to talk about like if you wanted to create like a karma-free vehicle, decomposing fungi is one of them, right? Because yeah,
Mm,
you're just eating things that are already dying. And if you think about like mushrooms can be incredible, because mushrooms are just the part that you see. The mycelial roots are this whole other thing. It's like a network.
yeah,
And if you look at
yeah,
it from like above and filled in, it looks like the neurons of the brain or the internet with a whole bunch of different connector sites, redundant pathways. And it's like if we were
yeah,
to think of this fractally, like when you see certain patterns, certain things present itself. So if you look at the internet, you look at the neurons, you look at mushrooms, I see intelligence. I see intelligence in the way that that works, right? And like
yeah.
you'll speak to you, like eat some mushrooms, close your eyes, ask it a question, and it'll answer you. That's what stopped me from being an atheist. The mushrooms spoke
Mm,
to me, and like they spoke to me and manipulated like the 3D reality and like it when I was sober, and like that's what shook me up. But like as it relates to the death energy, yeah, I mean a compost pile is a deep, deep magic, because you are taking dead things and transforming them into something that's useful. And so, in the same area, you have so much death, but so much life, right? Um, and in all of that is mushrooms, breaking them down and making it all available. And like I was talking about mushrooms being like the internet, if you look at a single fungal organism can exist throughout an entire forest. Like it's all one gigantic organism going through all the soil. And I believe the largest one is like out in Oregon or something. It's like 1,000 meters squared or like so many kilometers apart, the same organism. And it acts as like the internet for the forest, in which they'll find an area that's got a lot of phosphorus and not enough nitrogen, and another area with a lot of nitrogen and not enough phosphorus, and they will send the molecules along the mycelial pathways and actually cultivate the land around it. Which is why if you're gonna grow food, like you need to cultivate a healthy mycelial uh, diversity there. But mushrooms are
You're
a lot
so
like people.
wise.
Sorry, go on. Yeah.
No, I was just saying, like, you're so wise. I love it. Say one thing I like heard about the mushrooms, or I heard from the mushrooms in a trip, is that like they represent the living dead. And I don't take what I'm saying too seriously, but that you can access codes from the dead through the mushroom. And that's part of like we're experiencing the psyche of what has been before when we're tripping. I don't know really what that means or
I
like
I
how
can
logical it is.
I can see that very strongly. Like, yeah. Oh, I'm seeing Ian. Mushrooms give me Scorpio energy. Oh, for sure. And like, let's say LSD gives you Aquarian energy or something like that. But like, I've heard my best friend describes LSD and mushrooms. He's like, LSD is like being given the keys to an interdimensional roller coaster ride, or like spaceship. And mushrooms, it's the exact same thing, except you don't get to drive. The mushroom is driving. And so yeah, it'll take you to some deep places. But I mean, the Mazateks called the mushrooms, I believe, Texacoatl, which means flesh of the gods. And like think of a sacrament in which like you are literally destroying it to take it into your body. You are mashing it with these bones in your mouth and putting it into an acid pit we call our stomach. And it is like, destroy me and I will still show you life. And so like I have nothing else to contribute other than like what you just said resonates very strongly. Like mushrooms and death are so hand in hand. And yeah, it's
Yeah.
beautiful. I'm so grateful that they've been given to us to help to walk us home. And to talk about good news, in Canada right now, if you have a terminal illness, you can get legally, and because of our healthcare system, subsidized psychedelic treatments, MD or psilocybin therapy for end of life. And it's like over 80% of the people who take it are no longer scared of death afterwards. And like,
So cool.
what
Cool.
just imagine 15, 20 years, right? Having a mushroom hospice, right?
Yeah.
A community where it's like a
Yeah.
party on your way out. And
Yeah.
like Ram Dass would talk about like
Oh,
he
I
used to
love it.
yeah, Ram Dass would talk about, he would work with people in the last moments of their life because one, there's so much truth there, and two, he said that he would help if you hold space in the right way, they will themselves do the work of hundreds of lifetimes or whatever, if you can just hold that space. So like how gorgeous would that be?
That's so gorgeous. Steph, thank you for being here. Says, same Leslie, Lacey, that's a great way to put it. Vulnerability hangover. Yeah, we all have it because the Matrix has taught us not to be vulnerable. Um, so many of us are afraid of being intimate because we're afraid of that vulnerability. To have true intimacy is the vulnerability. Sweet Shayna's here. I feel like you and Shayna have similar energies in a way. Maybe saying that is weird. I don't know if similar energies is the right way, but Shayna has a really, really cool place and does their version of like homesteading. Shayna, do you consider yourself a homesteader? One day I want to do a live with Shayna too, where we just see their living space because it's fucking magic and cool. So thank you for being here. Moxie's here. Moxie says, thank you both. I have access to a bit of land to start cultivating this spring. I'm wondering what are some basics to make sure to start with? Great question. TR?
Start small, start manageable, plan her out, like let's not go crazy with it. Like just start going through the motions of germinating seeds, putting them in the soil, and getting a harvest out of it. You know,
Yeah.
my partner has come home and she has just said, grow things that you like to eat, because there's
Oh,
no better encouraging factor for this than by eating a harvest that is far better than what you will get in any restaurant, because you're eating fresh, nutrient dense produce. I mean, we once it was like basil, tomato, and potatoes. No, nothing on top of it. It was just so flavorful that those three things together were just so delicious. So yeah, start small, start manageable. It's all about building soil. You're adding compost to it, and year after year, it'll slowly get more nutrient dense, more healthy. Don't be discouraged by mistakes. If you engage in this through ignorance, through incompetence, through dumb luck or bad luck, you're gonna kill plants, or stuff is gonna die on you. It's what's going to happen. It's just to keep going and keep germinating those seeds. And it's why starting with sprouting is so beautiful, because what are you literally doing? You are germinating seeds. You are planting an intention, right? And I think Imbolc coming up is a wonderful time to germinate some seeds, and then
yeah.
to later reap that harvests, right? Just
Tell
just
them,
start getting a cycle with the seasons.
yeah.
Pay attention. What's your area like when it's raining? What's it like when it's dry? Like, yeah, slow down and let her speak to you, and then like you can find a lot of the other basics online. I'm gonna give you a link, Lacey, because I don't know how to post it. That is like a free starter course for everybody on how to do
Yeah.
this. It's done by the guys who do permaculture. I mean, there's nothing free in this world. You give your email, they put you on a mailing list, and try to once a week they'll send you a letter of like, here's our paid programmings, but you can just unsubscribe. They're really good people. So I'm just gonna send that to you, Lacey. But
Are you on
every
Discord, TR? Because I think people have been trying, no pressure, you don't have to be on there, but I definitely have seen that people have tried to reach out to you a couple times. I think about the Psychedelic Society and some other things.
Yeah, let me just an apology to the community, but yeah, after being so vulnerably, I had that vulnerable hangover, and I think vulnerable hangover, it's a wonderful word, because when you can name it, it takes away some power, like you can manage it, and it's
Yeah,
like I think that's part of it. It's just like how after like a hard psychedelic trip, you might want to be alone for a while or feel a little low, and that's not a bad thing. It's just because you're in the yin period of the whole experience, and just kind of like
totally.
let it all, like think of the night. You don't have to make the night happen. It's just gonna pass. So like
Yeah.
just let the yin period pass. And I want to apologize to everybody, but I just had to step out afterwards. I haven't signed on to the Discord yet. And I only signed on Patreon when Lacey texted me saying, have you seen my message a month ago? um, so I'm
Yeah.
gonna start integrating with people on the Discord. People have
Yeah.
questions
And
for the
again,
reason.
you don't have to apologize and no pressure, you know? I know the Discord can be a lot for me. And part of our magic is sacred rest. It's like the death, the rebirth. Sometimes we're out in arsenal energy. Sometimes it's about sacred rest. Sometimes it's more healer energy. And here there's no pressure to be in any of it or to be in all of it. Moxie, something my guides are saying for you is to do what TR said earlier. Well, this isn't what my guide said, but to try doing what TR said earlier. I know you work with herbs a lot, Moxie, and I love what you've been sharing with us and what you've been making with your herbs. And you show it in such a beautiful way. Like, I love the pictures you take of what you're making and how you describe it. So that is fucking homestead energy for sure. And then doing the herb walks. But for you, Moxie, my guides are screaming, learn about the poisonous plants in your area. I don't know exactly why they're saying that, but poisonous plants can also be medicine. And I think there's something about you, Moxie, that's supposed to work with the poison around you to alchemize it. Maybe not even alchemize it. Part of like working with the poison plants is accepting that they're poison, accepting their shadow. But I think that's beautiful that you're doing that, Moxie. I love it.
This isn't
Jonathan,
exactly oh, sorry, this isn't exactly poisonous plants, but this is an amazing book, Invasive Plant Medicine, right? And, like,
yes.
what's amazing about this is, like, if you look at where you are and you go like, "Oh, there's this weed that's growing all over the property, and it's so difficult, takes over everything." Like, for all you know, like, we've got something growing on the property that treats Lyme, right? Like, its roots treats Lyme, and it takes over the whole property. So here we are lamenting that it's here, but it's a medicine. And we also learned we can
What is
use the
it?
stalks. Japanese knotweed.
Knotwood? Yeah. Also known as reversatol. I take it every day.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
there you
That's
go.
it.
We've got another weed that we use and feed our rabbits because it grows so abundantly. Like, yeah. Um,
And Japanese not wood. Is it not wood or not weed?
these things
Um,
they go by so many different names.
yeah, and I call it
Bamboo.
reversatol a lot. And people use like people use reversatol on their face because it's anti-aging and antioxidant like crazy. And it's so protective of the heart chakra. So you can do reversatol. I think it's best taken as tea with black pepper. The black pepper enhances its bioavailability within the body. And there's a lot happening with people's hearts right now. Like you guys have seen those videos of like soccer players just dropping on the field. I'm not going to pretend to know why or have anything around that. I'm not a doctor, but I do know like spiritually it feels like we're supposed to be protecting our hearts right now. Japanese knotwood reversatol, so good for that. So I love that you bring that up. Jonathan says, "Destroy me, and I will show you life." Love this so much. Thank you, Jonathan.
Yeah. I I mean, there are some readings of the Dead Sea Scrolls, and the Gnostic Gospels that will put forth that Jesus was or Christ was an entity that would show up through, utilizing Amanita muscaria mushrooms, right? Like, I mean, I don't know how much I believe in that, but or that specifically, but, like, I mean, there's a lot of connections there with the death and resurrection and with mushrooms.
So cool. So cool. Um, okay, we'll probably go in a second. I don't want to keep you all day. You've been pouring gold out from you and giving us so much beautiful information to work with. Like, thank you so much, TR. And give love to your partner for us. You've brought up your partner in almost every live and given us gold that you can tell that you guys work in tandem in your knowledge and energy. And so thank you for sharing that energy with us too. Ian says, Oregon is working on opening up a psilocybin therapy clinic, and I'm interested in looking into it. Yeah, I could see you like working in one of those, Ian, or working with it as a doula.
Yeah.
Yeah, so if you guys have any last thoughts or feelings or questions, let us know and we'll head out.
I've got,
John,
something nice to end on, so whenever we've got that, I've got something to end on.
okay, cool. Jonathan says a psychedelic hospice is my dream, honestly. Jonathan is a nurse and death doula. Yeah. I know it's kind of my dream too. I wish we could just link up and do it right now. Steph says, thank you so much. Thank you, Steph. Shayna says, I think we definitely do a sort of homesteading. I attribute it more to Nate than myself. He's the builder with the green thumb and responsible for our awesome gardens. That's amazing. But don't forget to give yourself credit too, Shayna. I've seen you in the kitchen on our lives making that herbal medicine. So you're doing it too. And
That's
thank
just as
you.
important, right? Like, this is another part of, reducing, quote, unquote, "traditional women's work." Like, if you're not preparing your harvest, then you lose it, you know? And if you're not transforming your harvest in these simple but profound ways, you don't have the medicine. It's just as important. And, like, everyone, like, I'll just encourage you, even if homesteading doesn't resonate with you, just find how to develop more skills that gives you more freedom. I mean, the Tao teaches us that the most joys come from skill, and that by developing skill, we're able to move through the world easier. So even if it's your
Oh,
art, you know, like, I mean, I've got a friend who's trying to start a whole business around this, but like, we need some great tunes to turn farming into a party. You know, we need our artists, right?
yeah,
We need the yoga instructor to go and like stretch us out after our backs hurt. And like,
yeah.
I'm not the strongest laborer. I have all sorts of spine problems. I'm not the brute. My partner's the brute. She fights with swords. They're blunted, but like she does legit medieval fighting. Like, so we all have our place. And
Yeah,
don't discount magic, guys.
totally. And also like birth work and nursing, that is all such beautiful like homesteading skills as well. Doulas. Yes, thank you, TR, and your partner. Thank you, Lacey. This has been inspiring and magic. Thank you all so much. Thank you, Ian. I'm more of the kitchen witch side of things. Yes, I've seen it, Shayna, and that is deeply a part of it. Thank you, Ha. Okay, beautiful. You guys are welcome to do any last questions or thoughts or feelings. And TR is going to close us out with what you wanted to share.
So I've spoken with her before. This woman in my community who we've become close with recently, a Cree medicine woman, recently had her 65th birthday, and this was her intention, her prayer that she gave out all the cards with. And I'd like to amplify that energy. It's very short, but if any of this resonates with you, I'd like you all to add your magic to it. So, Fiery's divine birthday intention. Dearest darling divine, may we honor and welcome our creative life force. May we connect deeply to our hearts, our arts, our wombs, our blood. May we honor our blood, sweat, tears as sacred water, offerings. May all involved in ongoing rapid erasure of sustainability of Mother Earth wake up. May we, with our divine intentions of love, gratitude, light, and hope, create balance. May we all embrace interdependence with all our relations. Thanks.
Oh, what a beautiful way. What a beautiful ending. Thank you for sharing that. Okay, it looks like we're done. TR, seriously, thank you so much. Like, this blew it out of the water. I learned so much from just speaking with you today. You're an amazing storyteller, an amazing teacher, an amazing healer. Thank you for helping us have a better understanding of how we could get closer to Earth and closer to the magic. How can people, I don't know if it's okay if you don't want people to find you, but if people want to reach out, how can they? If
Discord,
you
and like please reach out because I'd love talking to you guys because like it's so much better than talking to the muggles about all of this. It's just I'll do it in my own time. And if you want to follow someone, you can follow my partner on Instagram. It's Sarah's Forge, and you will watch somebody turn a slowly become a blacksmith. It's very fun to watch with a homesteading spin on it.
love.
So thank you for this opportunity. Honestly, I feel so grateful to be able to do this with everybody, and I'm just glad people got something from it.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. Okay. So much love to you. Love to your partner. And I hope we'll be seeing you sometime soon.
Bye, guys.
Bye.